Thank you. Be seated. Tina, did you want to tell them?
He did. I
Oh,
just
okay.
said yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Judge, before the jury comes in, can we do that housekeeping from yesterday?
I was going to mention that, yeah.
That is Exhibit ED1. We would move this into evidence. I just looked at the
Yeah,
facts.
that was from yesterday, Mr. Knox's
Yes.
stuff.
We didn't introduce the thumb drive, Scott. That was just demonstrative, the thumb drive. That's why we put the pictures in. Yeah.
Right. So that'll actually be 13. Defense 13, okay. Any objection, Mr. Rosenwasser? All right, it'll be admitted as defense 13. Thank you. Okay.
Jurors in the courtroom, Your Honor.
All righty.
You may be seated. All jurors are present.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, were you able to abide by my instructions during the recess? All right, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Escobar.
Mr. Reeves, some housekeeping matters that my colleagues here reminded me. I'm going to,
You may.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Defense Exhibit Composite AAA, and have you please take a look at that.
Yes, sir.
You recognize that?
Yes, sir, I do.
And what are those?
Those are certificates of training and professional certifications from my time at Busch Gardens.
Your Honor, we would move AAA into evidence. I've shown
Same
it.
reading as previously made objections.
Okay, same ruling. They'll be admitted as 14.
Mr. Reeves, I'm not going to ask you any questions about that. The jury will have the ability to look at those for themselves. Getting back now to the theater, I believe we left off where you had been waiting a bit in the lobby for Matt, you and Mrs. Reeves, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And then you indicated that you proceeded to go into the theater after buying some popcorn and a drink, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so when you went into the theater, where did you sit?
We sat on the very last row, almost in the middle of the theater. There's a wall that at the very back of the theater, there's a wall. We were right up against that wall.
Was it still pretty early on, meaning that the previews
sir.
were not playing? We were just there for a period of time?
The lights were up. There may have been something on the screen. We weren't paying much attention. It was probably housekeeping stuff like the concession stand, that sort of stuff.
Okay. And can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury whether Mr. and Mrs. Oulson were likewise seated in front of you and your wife?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How long of time passed during that period of time before the previews started?
I'm going to guess 10 minutes maybe, or I don't know exactly, 10 or 15 minutes, because we got there rather early.
Okay. And during those 10 or 15 minutes, did you notice whether Mr. Oulson was using his phone?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. And did you, during that time, at any point in time, interrupt his using of the phone and tell him to stop using the phone or anything like that?
Not until after the preview started.
Okay. And so for those 10 or 15 minutes, you and Vivian sat there, discussed whatever you all were discussing, is that correct?
I had texted my son and told him where we were sitting so he could find us, and other than that, just talking, I guess.
Okay. At some point in time, does an announcement come on?
I think right about the end of the advertisement says the turn off your cell phone graphic, I guess you could say, and then they announced to turn off your cell phones, if I remember correctly.
Okay. And did the previews then start?
Yes, sir, they did.
Okay. And so the previews start, the announcement has already come on, and were you looking at the previews?
Yes, sir,
And was your wife, Mrs. Reeves, also looking at the previews?
as far as I know.
And why were you looking at the previews?
Well, that's kind of how we decide what shows we're going to see. We kind of look at the trailers
To see what's coming?
to see what's coming, and then we'll decide whether or not we want to come.
At some point in time while you were viewing those previews, did you notice a light shining in the theater?
Yes, sir, I did. I noticed off to my right, over who turned out to be Mr. Oulson's left shoulder, was a cell phone.
And was that light shining on you?
It was shining in my face. Yeah, I tried to adjust my seat position, but it was still shining in my face.
What did you do at that point?
I waited for a while after they started because I don't know how long. I waited to see if he would put it away, if he was interested in what was on the screen or not, and it never went away.
And so what did you do, realizing that it was not going to be turned off as the announcement had requested of all patrons?
Let's keep our cell phones off, please.
When I realized that it wasn't going to go off and that it was still shining in my face, I leaned over and requested that he turn his phone off. I said, "Would you mind turning your phone off, sir?"
Okay. And so when you're saying leaned over, you were seated in your seat.
Yes, sir.
And tell the ladies and gentlemen what you mean by leaning over.
Well, when you're in a theater like that, I don't know how far apart we were, but I wasn't communicating with anybody but this gentleman. So I would lean over to get a little bit closer to him so that I didn't have to yell at him, and I just asked him if he'd put his phone away.
Okay. At that point in time, were the previews playing?
Yes, sir.
Were the previews loud?
Loud, and the lights had gone down. It was darker, but that's what I remember.
Okay. And so what response did you get from Mr. Oulson when you leaned forward to tell him, that was quietly, you said?
Yes, sir.
To please turn his phone off?
It was a fuck off, get the fuck out of my face was the response that I got back. He was facing away from me, but he was saying it loud enough to where I heard it.
And so what did you do at that point?
I sat back in my chair and still thinking that he might put it away.
Did you overhear some additional conversations after that statement was made to you?
I heard him talking because he was talking loudly, and I think he was talking to his wife or maybe to the theater in general because it was loud, and I perceived that his wife had reached over with one of her arms, and my thought was that she was probably trying to get him to quiet down.
Okay. And so what are you doing at this point in time? Are you just seated back?
Yes, sir. I waited to see if if he was going to turn his phone off.
Did you attempt to try to hear what was being discussed between Mr. Oulson and his wife?
No, sir. I don't think I did. It was loud. I could hear him talking. I never heard her say anything, and I really just picked up a word every now and then.
Okay. So, how long do you think you waited before you decided to leave the theater?
I think somewhere between right around 3/4 of a minute, I guess, half a minute, 3/4 of a minute. And it was still prominently displayed and still shining in my eyes.
Okay. And so what did you decide to do at that point?
Well, I decided that if I couldn't get him to turn it off, that it was between him and the theater. They're the ones that said you can't use one. It wasn't between him and I. So, I again, being not necessarily gentle, but I just leaned over and I said, you leave me no alternative other than to notify the management.
And how did he respond to that?
He didn't give a fuck what I did. And that was pretty loud, and he didn't turn around either. He was still facing away from me.
And so what did you do at this point?
Well, he was saying some other things that I could pick up a word every now and again. He was being kind of loud and stuff like that, but I didn't pick up any words. So I had a bag of popcorn in my hand. I handed it to my wife, and I started down the aisle towards the end aisle.
Mr. Reeves, why at that point in time didn't you just move your seats?
Well, the guy was just being mouthy. I mean, I've had a career of dealing with people like that. It didn't present a threat to me. I probably didn't think about how it affected my wife, but to me, I saw no threat to it at all.
And so you get up to do what?
I got up to go down the aisle to the end to go to the manager's office.
Okay, and it was still dark in the theater?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as you were leaving the theater, did you speak to any of the patrons where you were trying to get by?
Well, yeah, there's not a lot of space in there, and I didn't want to bump this guy's chair, so yeah, I used I used the wall behind me or behind my wife to kind of steady me as I walked down the aisle, so I didn't bump into his chair or step on anybody else's feet.
Okay. And you proceeded out?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And where did you go?
I went down the stairs and I went out front, and there was a young man at the where they take the tickets, and I asked him if there was a manager nearby, and he pointed me towards the guy that was sitting in the kiosk out front.
Okay. And so when you get to the individual that was at the kiosk out front, was there somebody else that was speaking to that manager at the time?
Yes, there was a lady standing right around the counter from me. She would have been on my right, and she was conversing with the manager and back and forth at that time.
Did you interrupt them at all during that process?
No, sir, I didn't.
Okay. Did you wait for your turn to speak to the manager?
Yes, sir, I waited until he acknowledged me.
And can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury exactly what you told the manager at that moment?
I told him that there was I said I kind of apologized to him and said I feel kind of strange doing this, but I'm a guy complaining on another guy. I said, but I've got a guy sitting in front of me that is using his cell phone, and I asked him politely to put his cell phone away, and I said he used a lot of profanity, and I said I don't feel comfortable talking to this guy again. Could you help me out?
Okay. And what did he say?
He responded that he would take care of it.
Okay.
That
And so where did you go then?
I went back in the theater.
And did you go back into your role?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And did you try to get back to your seat in a polite and courteous way?
Yeah, going in and out. I told people. Most people don't go out right after the show starts. It's kind of awkward, so I kind of felt awkward leaving at that particular point. But I said things like, "Sorry, I have to get by," "Excuse me," that sort of thing. Yes, sir.
Okay. Were you mad?
No, sir.
When you got up off your seat to go tell the manager, were you mad?
No, sir.
You heard Mrs. Roy come and testify before this jury. When you were leaving the theater, were you grumpy?
No, sir.
Did you tell the manager where you were seated?
Yes, sir, I did.
As you were walking back to your seat, or did you get back to your seat?
I got back to my seat, and then I took the popcorn bag from my wife and sat down and got it from her. One or the other, I got it from her.
Okay, and during that time period, did you hear Mr. Oulson making any statements?
I heard him. He wasn't talking to me. I don't know who he was talking to. He was talking, again, kind of loud. And he was saying something about the manager and the theater. I didn't pick up every word. I was standing up, and it was something about the theater and the manager, and he had been kind of staring in my direction, and I don't know. He wasn't talking to me, but he was speaking out loud.
He was staring at your directions as you were walking?
As I came back in, yes, sir. He kind of looked in my direction.
Okay. And was he accusing you of turning him into the manager?
I kind of interpreted it as that, but I didn't hear those exact words. It was, I think he was trying to relay that he was not happy.
Okay. And then what did you do at this point?
I tried to, I think the word is diffuse the situation, so I made a comment to him about if I had known that you had put your phone away, I wouldn't have involved the manager.
Okay. Now, Mr. Reeves, tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what happens at this very moment.
As I sit down, he's still talking loudly, and he's facing away from me. I can pick up a word every now and then, but I don't know what he's actually saying. And a movement caught me off on the right side of my eye, and I turned my head to look at him, and almost immediately he had turned and was on his feet, and I had something between me and the theater screen that I saw just a flash of a reflection off of. And then everything went kind of fuzzy.
Did you believe at that point that you had been hit?
Yes, sir, I did.
And where do you think that you were hit at that moment?
I think I was hit on my glasses on the top left side. That was where I felt the impact, I think. And I wasn't sure how it had happened because I didn't think he was that close to me. So it had to be something else.
That's what you thought?
Yes, sir.
This blur that you saw, were you able to describe it?
It was like a flash. It was between me and the screen. It was very close to me. It just didn't compute. I had no idea what it was at that time.
At that moment, did it appear that he was coming into your space?
At that point, I noticed that he was standing up. He was yelling a lot of profanities. There was threats and who the fuck do you think you are? I was texting my fucking daughter. The F word seemed to be his primary vocabulary at that point. Who the fuck do you think you are? I'm going to fuck you up or something. Now that's not exact because I'm picking up bits and pieces because this guy is very volatile and active. He's trying to come over the seats.
Did you try initially to get up?
I was in a seated position, and when I first detected the profanity and stuff, he was trying to come over the seat. He was trying to. I felt like he was trying to either that or get to me, one or the other. It appeared to me that I've never been in that kind of a position before, And I realized immediately, and I don't know how, whether he got onto his seat, I don't know what happened, but when he stood up, I'm sitting down in a completely defenseless position. I'm looking up at this guy, and he looked like a monster standing there. He was mad. He exhibited explosive behavior, both verbally and physically. And I had seen his wife, who had tried to control him when he jumped up, and she had a hold of his arm, and he had turned around. At that point, I was focused on him.
Why at that point were you just focused on him?
He was a threat. He was a threat that was very close to me. And the closer a threat is to you, the less time you have to react to anything that happens. I had tried to get further away from my wife because he was after me, and I had leaned as far as I could to my left, and I had kind of straightened my right leg out towards where my wife was sitting, and I didn't want to again hit his chair. He just appeared to me like he was out of control. That it was like his wife was kind of hanging onto his arm or his shoulder. She was in the peripheral. I saw him. He was reaching for me or trying to come over the seat again. It was at that point I couldn't get up. I was trapped. I couldn't go left or right, and even beyond being seated in front of this guy that's standing up in front of me, I'm leaning to the side, completely defenseless. I could do nothing to defend myself.
At some point, do you decide to pull your weapon?
At some point after he's reached, either trying to come over the seat or tried to hit me, at some point I made a decision that I had no alternative. The guy's, in my opinion, he's completely out of control. He's not settling down, and his wife is trying to hold him back, or appear to be trying to hold him back, or control him. I guess that would be the right word. And I've never been encountered by somebody exhibiting that uncontrolled anger or rage, and all of the perceptors that you could imagine, whether it's verbal, physical, expression. At some point at that time, I had no other choice, and I reached for my pistol.
Now, after reaching from your pistol, do you see some hands coming in your direction?
I'm pretty much zeroed in on him, and I know I made some comments at some point in there as this was happening. It was very quick, in my mind, it was, the event itself was very fast, and I didn't think I had enough time to respond. And at that point, I was concerned that he was so much above me and so full of rage, I guess you could say, that he was going to strike me with all the strength that he had or he could put together. I figured that this was the end of the line for me. I thought that at the very least I'd be seriously injured, if not killed.
Curtis, did you feel at that point in time that you had the capabilities to ward him off with your bare hands?
I was pretty sure I couldn't do that. That was never a question. In the position that I was in, there's no way I could have done that.
You fired a shot from your pistol?
One shot.
What happens after you fire that shot?
As soon as he turns away, then he's no longer a threat. So I lay down the pistol, and then I try to determine how bad I'm hurt. And then I realized that my glasses, the reason that everything is blurry is because my glasses were kind of sideways. I'm going to call it askew. This left piece here was down on my cheek, and my glasses were kind of, I guess you could call it askew. that's when I realized that the reason everything was so blurry was because my glasses had been knocked off.
Well, were they knocked off or were they askew?
Askew.
Okay. Were those the glasses you were wearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. May I see them?
Yes, sir.
May I approach?
Give me.
It's okay if I look at them as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
Curtis, these are the glasses that you had?
Yes, sir.
And don't be insulted. These are old man glasses that can switch and turn in every direction known to man. I'm not
Yeah.
going to break them,
Yes, sir.
right? I've done this before, right?
Yes, sir.
And these are the glasses that you were wearing that day.
Yes, sir, it is.
Curtis, did you want to shoot Chad Oulson?
I didn't want to shoot anybody. I came to the theater with my family to enjoy a movie, not to be attacked by some guy that's out of control.
The most dangerous of individuals are what? Individuals that are out of control.
Absolutely, anybody that's not controllable, their rage is so powerful, their thought patterns, in my opinion, are only towards whatever they feel anger towards. They're not influenced by the surrounding area.
Had you ever in your entire life seen anybody act the way Mr. Oulson acted in a movie theater? Do you ever see anybody? Did you ever experience anything like that?
I've never experienced anything like that inside of a theater or anywhere else. That was a complete surprise. It was a shock that somebody would actually do that. And I guess the thing that I couldn't understand, and all this passed through my mind right away, is why is somebody acting like that over such a trivial thing? I still haven't figured that out.
Why were you trying to create distance at some point in time in this situation?
Well, any time that you're involved in any kind of and I'm going back to training and exposure and experience for years, any time that you're going to be involved in something like that, the first thing that you want to do is get away from the individual. You want to, that would diffuse it. If you could get away from them, then whatever is going to happen may not happen. If you can't, then you're like in my case, I had nowhere to go and no way to get there.
How quickly did all this happen?
In my mind, it was the blink of an eye from the time I sat down until it was over.
Once you fired the shot, did you say, "Throw popcorn at me, will you"?
I had no knowledge at all about that popcorn in my statement. The deputies asked me that, I think. I never saw the popcorn until I saw it on the floor. I had no idea what had happened to the popcorn.
Did you shoot Mr. Oulson because of popcorn?
I shot Mr. Oulson because I thought he was going to seriously injure me or potentially kill me.
May I approach? Mr. Reeves, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 55, and I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 51, and ask you if you recognize those exhibits.
Yes, sir. These are the photographs that the ID tech from the sheriff's office took, I think, in the theater.
Did you get an opportunity to see yourself in a mirror while you were seated in the front seat of a patrol cruiser?
Yes, sir. The detectives put me in the passenger when they were conducting the interview, and I asked them if I could use their little mirror.
And why did you ask them if you could use their mirror?
After I had, my eye was still bothering me, and I had already.
Which eye was that?
Sir?
Which eye was that?
Left eye.
Okay.
Yes. My eye was still bothering me, and I wanted to see if I could see anything in it.
Okay. And does those pictures fairly and accurately depict what you saw in the mirror?
Yes, sir, it does. Yes, sir.
Okay. And what do you see on the left eye, the corner of your left eye, in the state's exhibits?
Yeah. It appears to me that the left corner of my eye going down across, I don't know, this area right here from up here on my top of my eyelid down to this little corner there.
Now, Mr. Reeves, when you put the firearm on your lap, why did you do that?
Because you don't know who else is in the theater, you don't know who else is armed, and I didn't want to be I wasn't a threat to anybody else. I was only trying to defend myself. I didn't want anybody else to think that I was a threat.
Is that training? Does that come from training and years of training as a law enforcement officer?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay. And so you put that gun on your left knee?
I put it on my knee. I think it was my left knee.
After you put that gun on your left knee, did someone come and pick up that gun from your left knee?
Yes, sir. As I was adjusting my glasses and examining my face, I didn't see his badge, but a deputy walked up, and I heard him say that he was a deputy, and so when I leaned back, I pointed at my pistol that was on my lap, so he picked it up.
Okay. Now, at that moment, were you able to look down at what was in between your feet?
As I put my glasses back on and the deputy was standing there, I looked down between my feet, and yes, I did. I saw the cell phone between my feet.
Van Cliff. Yeah, I see that cell phone real quick. May I approach you, Honor?
You may.
Mr. Reeves, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 24, and ask you to take a look at the interior of that exhibit and tell me if you recognize that exhibit.
Yes, sir, I think I do. The white spot up here, that kind of caught my eye. I think it was laying on the floor like that. But this is what it looks like, yes, sir.
Is that the phone that was located between your legs?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Reeves, you were arrested right there in seat number 9, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, by law enforcement.
Yes, sir.
And you were taken out in handcuffs to a vehicle, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you were interviewed.
Yes, sir.
And it's my understanding then you were interviewed by Detective Proctor and Detective Koenig, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The interview that you had with Detective Proctor and Detective Koenig were recorded, right?
Yes, sir.
And did you answer all of their questions?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you encourage them to ask you any questions that they needed to ask you there in that interview?
Yes, sir, I did.
And you waived your rights to remain silent
Yes, sir, I
that
did.
day, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
And you told them that you wanted to cooperate,
Yes, sir.
and did you?
Yes, sir.
May I have a moment?
You may.
No further questions.
Thank you.
Move to the approach.
Yes. Do you, all right, ladies and gentlemen, we need to take a short comfort break. Let's take 10 minutes and remember my instructions during the recess, please.
All right, we're going to recess for 10 minutes.
Do you want me to just let them go? Tina, call them back just a second.
Oh, and jurors, can I see the jurors back in here?
Sorry.
So sorry. One week to
Oh, okay.
Number 4 is in the.
Okay. We're gonna need to take an early lunch anyway, so rather than take a short break and then, go to lunch, I'm just gonna let you go. So we'll wait for number 4 though, but that's all. That way we won't have to call you back in and then go for another break. The lawyers and myself have some stuff to talk about. Any objection to?
No objection.
Okay. State, no objection to just telling number 4?
No objection.
Okay, yeah, you guys can go ahead. Remember my instructions during the recess. Be back at 12 o'clock.
They white, they can't access the internet. What we'd like to do is, for jury deliberations, have them have a computer, that way they can watch the video.
Okay.
If the court needs any case, I have a case directly on point that I can bring back after the break.
Okay.
That permits that.
Your Honor, as long as the defense likewise would be able to put our contents on that computer, I would think that there would be no problem.
Anything admitted into evidence will go back, and just off the top of my head, as long as it's a clean computer that can play, I can't imagine any reason why that wouldn't be the best way. Now, I don't know about you folks, but I know the state here understands we've had limitations in the past where we didn't have a computer that we could send back, so the process was always a little different. And it was very cumbersome, quite frankly, but it was what we had to do. We'd bring them back, let them watch, whoever had a computer that they could show, they'd watch, then they'd go back, they'd want to see it again, we'd have to do it all over again. No one could speak to them and they couldn't speak to us, it just for the purpose of showing. So it was very cumbersome. And I've often wished that we just had one that could just go back there. So if there's any objections to that, we'll hear them now, but
Judge, my only objection is that we want to make sure that whatever computer that they have are able to play the videos of both sides, obviously.
right.
Yeah, obviously you can use it.
Well, we've got to make sure that, we can download them. And when I spoke to Glenn, he thought it was a dinosaur, so I don't know what the capabilities are.
It's a Windows 7 because that's what was existing at the time. So we wiped it, the codec that you need to play the raw videos and everything that we have is on there, because Windows 10 just wouldn't accept
Okay,
it.
I get
So we had
that.
to go back to that. And then, of course, the Wi-Fi's been disabled, the Bluetooth has been disabled,
I don't have a problem with any of that.
and all that mechanical gut stuff.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that our stuff plays, so
All
I guess
right.
we'll have to.
Yeah,
maybe
check it out.
Go check it out.
I understand thoroughly. I've had a terrible time when we went to Windows 10. A lot of things didn't work all of a sudden, and so I get it. Just so long as both sides can equally utilize it and that it's not too difficult for the jury, as long as it's not too difficult for them to
It's
use.
set up with a tag, so they hit it, it goes right to the player. So
Okay.
there's no,
No other stuff?
there's,
Okay,
it is so clean, it's almost useless,
awesome.
except for
That, okay. All right, you guys, during the lunch break, will have an opportunity to look at that? Well, we don't have to do it
Right,
now
right,
anyway, so.
right. If we can do it after that.
Yeah, we can do it after that. All right,
And just for sake of argument, let's say that doesn't happen, then I guess for the defense, we have to use the cumbersome process.
okay, yeah, well,
Let's not argue about it until we figure out. We got
right,
enough things to
but
do.
definitely before the end of the day, let's have that ironed out.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Enjoy your lunch break.